Hello, everyone. I came across this article off of Vice talking about the sexist link between men's facial hair and their attitudes. I thought it was particularly interesting, mostly because myself, I have a happy beard. Most of the men who I hang out with have reasonable beards or some form of facial hair. And I know some of our favorite online individuals like Godsod and Carl Benjamin or Sargon of Akkad have wonderful beards also. Thunderfoot has his scraggly little one. So I just wanted to go over this article quickly and point out some funny elements from it. It's a rough read on this. Let's take a look, shall we? In light of this troubling news, we asked men with beards what they think about facial hair. The relationship between men and beards is a complex one. Actually, it's remarkably simple. We have testosterone, we grow beards, it makes us look larger, makes us more intimidating, gives us larger social presence. I swear, feminists really believe that humans were created. They were just like plunked down out of the heavens. Here you are, you're a human, tabula rasa, you know nothing, it's all socialization, and we kind of wandered around like an old school RPG NPC moment where we just kind of bump into one another and walk in random directions, not realizing what we're doing. We're just completely lost, and we somehow figured out how to build bridges and rockets and purify water. Ridiculous. Anyways, and the relationship between a man, his beard, and everyone else is even more fraught. Of course it is. If beards grow to make us look larger and more intimidating, then yes, it'll have a degree of aggressiveness to it because we want to be able to challenge other men for particular standing within our tiny little mammalian tribe. Beginning in the 19th century, men made great efforts to physically distinguish themselves from women. I think men had been doing that for a long time. Men don't really wear dresses. Different times we even wore cod pieces. What's a cod piece? It's a fancy attachment that goes around the hips and is anchored between the loins and has a large, pointed cone coming off of the groin to simulate a penis. This was a adornment which was worn for fun. Here, let's look it up. Let's look it up. Cod piece. Eh. Images. Oh, some of these are going to be wonderful, I'm sure. It's a good one. What's a good one here? Yes, here we are. There's a traditional looking one. Very traditional looking one. And even modern particular, here's what a knight would wear. Knights, these guys were around kind of well before the 18th century. And where's that? There you go. There's Batman, Robin. Yeah, codpieces on. Batgirl doesn't, but who cares about her? All right, back to the article. Men's clothing styles shifted from a corseted, curvaceous look. Yes, that's called fashion. Not one dissimilar from a female figure, but women wore even tighter corsets at the time. Something worth noting. To the boxy silhouette of a three-piece suit. Yeah, it was a transition overnight. I mean, we're going to ignore the fact that before men did not wear coats regularly, and then we started lightening our base wear and putting a coat over top. And then we went away from kind of tighter fitting undershirts to slightly looser ones for mobility reasons, mostly because the average person was making enough money at that point due to industrial factors to actually be able to afford slightly better clothing, but uh, also needs to have a certain degree of function to it because they're poor as shit and they had to do all their own work. Tight clothes were for people who had money, who didn't have to do all their own house cleaning, all their own cooking, all their laundry, all their own shopping, and so forth. Anyways, men also began donning another distinct physical feature: facial hair. False! False, false, false. Men had facial hair of all sorts, all throughout time. It doesn't matter what time period you were looking at. The, I think, largest exception to that was the certain period of time in early Roman conquerings. Many of the Roman emperors did not have any facial hair. But beyond that, even Socrates, was described as having a beard. Now, whether or not he actually existed or not is irrelevant. We know that Marcus Aurelius had a beard. Alexander the Great donned a beard at times. Even more contemporary figures, you have Karl Marx, Sigmund Freud, very well bearded men. So why is this a thought that beards didn't exist? English kings throughout history had beards. Henry VIII had a beard, for Christ's sake. He was very bearded throughout his entire life. Just ridiculous to think that all of a sudden men were these very effeminate looking things, and then suddenly we wanted to be super sexist, and so we grew a beard. Anyways, onward and forward. Uh, this is all written by Sarah Gold McBride in a paper titled "Power is on the Side of the Beard: Masculinity and Facial Hair in the 19th Century America." So in other words, it's a 19th century focused paper, and we're going to focus on a few people, cherry pick it, and go from there. We're going to ignore the fact that for the most part, the poor couldn't afford convenient shaving methods, so they ended up having just to go with a beard. That included the ladies. The small but still growing middle class was able to afford home razor systems where they had to do it themselves. Poor did that too, but would do it less frequently simply because certain things like lathering was so expensive, and cold water shaving usually resulted in a laceration or lacerated face. And the rich got other people to do it for them. Go figure. During the time, the beard existed as a symbol of a man's distinct difference from and superiority over women. What? That is a stupid statement. Yes, I have a beard to show that I'm better than women. Like, talk about a non sequitur. But that won't be the first one in this article. Clearly, the logic went. Logic, yeah, sure. We'll see where the fallacies lie. A human who can produce such bountiful facial hair is of higher status. Actually, that's not bad. When we were roaming around, as naked as the day is long, yeah, absolutely. There's a certain degree of prominence that came from that. It was denoted degrees of testosterone, and testosterone meant aggressiveness, which means more ensured protection in a evolutionary psychology sense. So of course, yeah, higher status from facial hair in relation to ability to pass one's genes on. Women don't want a guy that can't protect them in a time where it was very likely you would be dead by age 25. Either of your teeth, of poor water, of infections from injuries, or from brutal maimings and trauma. That's what killed us, when having a beard denoted actual status. This points to the broader theme of 19th century life, okay? McBride told broadly over the phone. They believe that the physical body can be examined to reveal important information about a person. Racial differences in phrenology, for those who don't know, phrenology was the studying of the shape of the skull, where phrenologists would manipulate the skull, touch it, palpate it, feel it all over, and they wrote down particular notes in regions of the skull shape which they believed were directly linked to certain personality traits. And this was used as actual evidence to discriminate against blacks in the United States, particularly, because they continually changed the regions of where criminality existed and would lie about how expressed a convict's criminal region was expressed, and especially so in blacks. That's real racism right there, not this soft bullshit today of apparently someone in a truck at one point yelling "nigger" from it. I don't believe it, but apparently it happened. So says the gentleman at Mizzou. Let's see here. Racial differences in phrenology, the examination of skull shape, are classic examples of this. But now that we're okay, thankfully out of the Victorian era, sure, do hirsute, I'm familiar with that word, jawlines still indicate as much in the 21st century? Probably not. Probably not. It's almost like freedom in choice and more free time completely change our perceptions on how we engage in things. According to a new study, the answer is yes. The study titled "The Association Between Men's Sexist Attitudes and Facial Hair." Was that? actually what it was called. Here's the abstract. Oh, it was. Lovely. We'll go to the abstract in a minute here. Examine the beliefs of 500 American and Indian bearded and non-bearded men to reduce the likelihood that the link between facial hair and sexism wasn't culturally specific by asking them to fill out a questionnaire. I am a psychodiagnostician or psychometrist. I studied statistics. I studied test and assessment design. I have applied a variety of different psychometric tests to individuals for several years. One thing that you will learn in any psychology stats class is questionnaires are garbage. Flat garbage. Most questionnaires are so poorly and abysmally designed that your inherent bias is built right into the study in the outset. The most benign questions are going to be put in there to have an appearance of control, but frequently they lead mostly to obfuscation of otherwise the obvious fact that there's bias. Asking someone what their favorite color is, for example, is a control question. You can say, what's your favorite color? It's an open-ended question. You don't have to worry about that. Making direct statements where it's a yes, no, or a Likert scale, or Likert type scale, which isn't a thing, but people still use that terminology, where it's, on a 1 to 5 basis. Strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. Even then, those are loaded questions. When you don't have a secondary control question that asks that similar question but in a negative sense to see if there is a link. Plus, you have to play around with language, but we'll get to that. Let's see. Australian researchers Julian Oldmeadow and Barnaby Dixon posited that men with relatively sexist attitudes would be more likely to allow their facial hair to grow than men with less sexist attitudes, due to the fact that facial hair has been traditionally associated with higher levels of perceived masculinity. Okay. The survey included prompts like, quote, women are too easily offended, end quote, and, quote, once a woman gets a man committed to her, she usually tries to put him on a tight leash, to gauge what the researchers called hostile sexism. It also included items to measure benevolent, or what's colloquially referred to as white knight. Ha! Jesus Christ. White knight. White knight. Excellent. Sexism. Women should be cherished and protected by men is an example of benevolent sexism. Subsequently, they found that men with facial hair scored higher on the hostile sexism scale than men who were clean-shaven. Men, I've learned, do not like to be generalized. Not all men with facial hair are sexist. No one likes being generalized. Nobody. Women don't like it. Blacks don't like it. Whites don't like it. Humans don't like to be generalized. No one likes to say all humans. Because even that statement there can be aggravating to many individuals. All humans breathe air. You will get someone that will say, well, actually, we do X, which means this. It's the same conclusion, but you will be corrected on it. Because the generalizations are incredibly fraught with problems. And it's one reason why the SJW community is utterly dumb. I put people into particular identities, which then generalizes that identity, rather than celebrating individual expression from a more universally equal point. Okay, I heard a chorus of men faintly shout in my nightmares of the not all men. Okay, sure. Then you're fucking nuts. Sorry. Yeah, that's a really strange, myopic statement. So I asked a few men what they thought about their facial hair in light of the troubling news. Hey, here's a guy. Nice sweater, bro. Gene Morgan, 34, copywriter. Recently, a study came out that concluded men with beards tend to have more sexist attitudes toward women. How does that make you feel about your beard? Gene replies, the same? I mean, I've had a beard for a better part of a decade, and at this point, it's like an old tattoo or something. I don't think about my beard. I just think shaving my whole face is terrible, and I don't like doing it. If anything, my beard has given me more respect and understanding when it comes to women and personal grooming. What do you know? Question about men turned into asking women. I don't expect my partner to shave anything because, knowing how much it sucks to shave my face, it really must suck to shave armpits, legs, vagina, and pretty much anything else. When did you start growing your beard and what motivated you? I grew my first beard in my mid-20s, and it was one of those things where I just wanted to see if I could do it. Huh. No, it's because you wanted to be a sexist. Or you wanted people to know you're a sexist. Next up, you got to wear that star on your arm. I know as a writer, do you feel, I know you as a writer, sorry, do you feel that beards are particularly literary of facial hair? Do you feel that beards are particularly literary of facial hair? Okay. Yeah, totally. I mean, reading The Old Man and the Sea at a very young age and seeing a picture of Hemingway on the back. Ooh, link. Ah, was Ernest Hemingway hot? There's a hot topic right there. That's something we should be discussing. Wonderful. Anyways, there's an unbearded Hemingway. Hemingway was a drunk also, so keep that in mind. And a real mighty sexist. Anyways, as a boy, I saw men with beards as wise and scholarly, which in some ways seems true. Older people are typically wiser, and men do have some age on them before they grow a beard, unless they're that one kid with a full chest hair in junior high. Oh, excellent. If applicable, how does your partner feel about your beard? My partner thinks, what the why would you put this in? If you asked him in an email, why would you put this in? You just talked to him. Like, what kind of garbage writing is this? The editor should have been like, nope, scrub that, fix that. Just like the white knight problem. My partner thinks I look like a baby when I have a clean-shaven face. Exactly. So, in other words, she views that element of neoteny to be unattractive, and she would rather a man look like a man. What do you know? There's an expression of personal preference for both sides. Have you ever altered your beard at a partner's request? I trim it down when she says something. She doesn't like to, quote, eat it when we kiss, and that seems like a pretty fair request. Do you think that you perceive men with beards as more masculine? For example, do you think, in a fight, your odds would be better against a bearded man or a beardless man of the same height and weight? Well, if the guy doesn't know shit about fighting, it's not going to matter. That's a dumb question to ask. If he has no experience with any type of altercation or martial art or sparring or anything like that, it's going to be absolutely irrelevant. It's going to fall more on one's experience when engaging in an altercation, more so than, oh, does he or does he not have a beard? Now, as I mentioned earlier, yes, beards for a long time in human evolution were to denote higher degrees of testosterone, and it allowed a man to use that to intimidate others by appearing larger, that thicker jawline that has an appearance when you have a beard. So there is an evolutionary explanation for this, but again, feminist writer, it's all cultural, it's all culturally developed. We were created and we develop culture, and everything can be transmitted only by culture. Evolution has no play in this. Anyways, Gene responds, I might, at least on the surface, see men with beards as more masculine, which feels silly to say since I don't view myself as particularly masculine. Yeah, that was this guy. Doesn't view himself as particularly masculine. Okay, cool. Look at that giant beard. Look at that giant beard. Doesn't view himself as masculine. Oh, excellent. As for fighting, I'm not worried much about perceived masculinity when I'm in a violent situation. What do you know? However, I will say that I'm really scared of guys with shaved heads. Strength and manliness aren't as scary as crazy in a fight, and guys with shaved heads seem to have that have crazy on lock. Aw, poor bald guys. That's discrimination against bald men. Baldism. Some men aren't able to grow a beard. Do you feel like you have a certain beard privilege? Everything's privilege. Everything has to be fucking privilege, doesn't it? I do. My beard privilege comes with the ability to hide a double chin. And what do you know? The guy responds with great humor. Would you ever shave your beard? Yes, if I lost 30 pounds, I'd give my clean face a try. Until I'm thin, I'm hiding under all this hair. Ah, good guy. All right. I don't really want to go through these other guys because it's just a bunch more similar stuff. Might as well. That's pretty short. Stephen Kosloff, he's 45 and an editor. He responds to the first question about sexist attitudes. How do you feel about that? It does not change my feelings about my beard, and I am 5,000% pro-feminist guy. Okay, maybe while you're crying in the shower with a duck, but okay, that was him. Weird. I also know a lot of guys with beards who are not remotely sexist, although that's just anecdotal evidence. Yeah, just like this goddamn study. Of course, I would be curious to see what the study's inclusion criteria were, and I also wonder about the methodology. it does confirm other studies about people's perceptions about guys with beards. Perceptions, sure, but you can't measure that. That's absolutely subjective. There's no objective measure you can get from individual subjective feelings. Even if you say to everybody, "Hey, what do you think about X? What do you think about the color green?" You're going to get such a varied response that in its subjectivity will make it impossible to actually get a real empirical sense about that. You can get data, sure, but you don't get any empiricism from that data. When did you start growing your beard and what motivated you? 2009. I'd always been curious what it would look like with beard, and I thought it would suit me. Deep background most of the time. As it started to grow in, it would feel scratchy and a bit of an irritant, but that would fall for some reason. But that fall, for some reason, it grew in and it felt fine. Yeah, of course, beards are awesome. How does your partner feel about your beard? She loves it and even expressed a preference for beards in her online dating profile. Ha! How about that, eh? Do you think that you perceive men with beards as more masculine? For example, do you think in a fight, blah, 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 blah? Short answer, no. Beards do different things for different guys. Not all beards are created equal. Would you ever shave your beard? Yes. And yeah, this guy, he's 23. Christian, he's a startup guy, whatever that means. Well, if you just, like, I know what startup guy means. I mean, you would think that you'd put something in there that's a little more accurate, like entrepreneur or business owner or programmer, startup guy. I could be a startup guy right now. I haven't put a dollar in towards anything, but I could be a startup guy. Fantastic. Anyways, uh, why beard problems? He says, sometimes I'm just too lazy. Other times I enjoy being able to stroke more than just my baby butter smooth chin while I'm plotting my next move. It makes me look more devious when in all actuality, I'm probably the least mischievous and risky person, purely speaking outside of financials, of all time. It gives me an illusion of edge. So he does it for himself. So he has confidence. How do you how do your partners feel about your facial hair? Most of my partners have liked it, but they've also asked why I'm growing it since it wouldn't fully connect into a beard within a reasonable amount of time. Have you ever altered your beard at a partner's request? Yes and no. I had dreadlocks until my junior year of college. My ex was a smart lady, still is. She helped me see how white people wouldn't take me seriously if I had dreadlocks. Well, those white people are fucking dumb, and I'm sorry that you got subjected to such an idiot that was so driven by a false agenda that she would lie and manipulate you to make you believe that people wouldn't take you seriously because of dreadlocks. I'm sorry for that. That is a form of mental abuse, and you should not have been subjected to that. Anyways, so one day I woke up and cut them off myself. I was bald and not quite able to pull off the Boris Kodjoe look, so I shaved off my chin strap. Beside that, no other instances. What is Boris Kodjoe? Alright, yeah, I can see that. Actually, Luke. I want the TV show Luke. There you go. There's Luke from Jessica Jones. There he is in the show. Look at that. That guy's got it down. Where were we? We were here. Computer's having a hiccup. All right, there we go. Do you think that you perceive men with beards as more masculine? Not at all. My best friend could go the craziest of beards, but listens to Justin Bieber's Sorry on the regular. The track is absolutely flame, don't get me wrong, but there's no correlation. Also, masculinity is a played out term. Well, let's take a quick look at the study. See what it actually says. Here's the abstract to the study. I'm not going to buy it, but here's just the general abstract. Facial hair, like many masculine secondary sexual traits, plays a significant role in perceptions of an array of socio-sexual traits in men. I'm going to parse that quick. Secondary sexual traits is a thing. There are secondary sexual characteristics. Primary ones are your genitalia, and your secondary ones are expressions outside of that. So for men, it's frequently facial hair, body hair, shoulder width is really important, broad shoulders, depth of voice, secondary sexual characteristic. Um, while there is consensus that beards enhance perceptions of masculinity, age, social dominance, and aggressiveness, no, I know it's an abstract, but usually you even then put the kind of link into there, just a little reference out. Anyways, the perceived attractiveness of facial hair varies greatly across women. Yeah, I'm sure that also the presence of beards is perceived as variable across those other factors. Anyways, given the ease of which facial hair can be groomed and removed entirely, why should some men retain beards and others choose to remove them? A personal preference. Why do some women wear makeup and others don't? Do women who wear makeup are sexist because they think that men are dumb and are easy to be played in by modifying their appearance? Probably not. I think a lot of women wear makeup because they want to, because it's personal preference, because it gives them confidence. We hypothesize that men with relatively sexist attitudes would be more likely to allow their facial hair to grow than men with less sexist attitudes. This is why social science is dying. You don't go with a null, or you go with a null variable. You say, we hypothesize that beards play no effect on sexist attitudes. That's our approach. We expect to find no difference here. We're not going to load it. We're not going to look for it. We have a series of questions that would suggest, and I say that clearly, would suggest a particularly sexist attitude, but we have control questions which ask the negative of that previous question to counterbalance them, to see if that exists fully. And from there, we will make our final conclusion. And if we're wrong, that is, the null variable is proven inadequate, then that will show a link between sexist attitudes, or suggest a link between sexist attitudes and beards, whether or not one has a beard. Anyways, that is just ridiculous. Men from the USA, 223 of them, and India, 309 of them, completed an online survey measuring demographic variables. I've already complained about the problem with surveys or questionnaires. Ambivalent sexism, in other words, what do they feel about sexism going in, and facial hair status. After controlling for demographic variables, men with facial hair were significantly higher in hostile sexism than clean-shaven men. Hostile sexism was a significant predictor of facial hair status over and above demographic variables, and facial hair was more frequent among ambivalent and hostile sexists than among benevolent and non-sexists. It is suggested that sexist men choose to grow facial hair because it maximizes sexual dimorphism and augments perceived masculinity and dominance. Are you kidding me? Right in the fucking abstract, it is suggested that sexist men. It's not that that's part of their hypothesis from derived from other studies, but right there, they're labeling men as sexist in their study and saying they have beards. Their bias going into the design, implementation, collection, and analysis was wholly that men are sexist for having beards. Their fucking hypothesis said it. This is why social science is dying. This is why it's not taken seriously. This is why it's a goddamn echo chamber. Because you better believe that when this was produced, it went for peer review to other individuals within some goddamn sociology department or weak-ass psychology wing, and they said, oh, yeah, that makes lots of sense. We see you're not using a null hypothesis, but go ahead. It's a research study. We believe it. Well, that's all I have to say about this article. Again, this was Bearded Men Are Sexist, New Study Says, by Gabby Bess, posted on Vice Broadly section. Go ahead and look it up at any time. Men with beards are not inherently more sexist. I'm sorry, there is no good link there. That is garbage evidence. It is weak correlational data, partially backed by a garbage history of fashion and men. A little bit of evolutionary psych seemed to have debunked most of it. Well, thank you all for watching. it has been a lot of fun.